So thank you so much for coming. Husband and wife, we're neurologists, and we met 15 years ago, far, far away. We're both from a background of service. Her father was a diplomat, my father was a diplomat, so we traveled a lot, Africa, everywhere else, and we met and we started talking, and the first subject was about our grandparents. My grandfather, who was one of the smartest people I've ever met, died from Alzheimer's. You read the book. My uncles were surgeons, and they had a farm near Frederick, Virginia, for hunting. And we would sit there, and nobody would hunt. They were all terrible. And they would sit and play chess. And while playing chess, and he used to beat everybody. He forgot how to move a knight. The knight is a little tricky, you know. And that shook everybody, and then over the next couple of years we saw the decline. And for somebody like him, who was the anchor of the family, I mean, as far as anchors go, that's like, it just shook the entire family. And then my grandmother, who actually educated herself and was probably the smartest, she declined the same way. And I remember we had to share a room, and the common denominator of dementia is anxiety. In fact, I treat anxiety more than I treat the memory. And anxiety is profound, ubiquitous, ever-present, and has many faces, but the two common faces is either attack, push back, which is actually not pushing you back, pushing the thing in front, or turning your face. She was the turning the face. So I actually saw this powerful woman turn her face toward the wall and slowly perish into that wall, just melt into that wall. This powerful woman, I mean, we could have 4 books around her. Ayesha's grandfather, I knew before I knew her. He was a Columbia University, then surgery, Columbia University, then Johns Hopkins Public Health, then went to Afghanistan, became the Secretary of Education, Secretary of Health, Prime Minister, changed the whole country towards women's empowerment, and then he gets dementia and slowly wither away. So yeah.
It was a very difficult time for all of us to see this incredible man slowly and gradually lose parts of himself. So that stayed with me. That was the impetus.
That was the first conversation we had.
Yes.
And so that seed, we came back. We started the fellowship at UCSD, which was the #1 dementia place with Leon Thal and everybody. We worked there. She worked on fMRIs. I did clinical trials, drug after drug. Prior to that, I was at NIH, experimental therapeutics branch. It doesn't get any more drug pushing than that. That's where all the drugs are experimented. In fact, one of the first studies was progressive supranuclear palsy, which is an aggressive form of Parkinson's. We had these tubes into the lady's brain, growth factors, BDNF in this side, control on this side. Lots of patients, nothing, no outcomes. Just lots of experiments, lots of money. So we were becoming cynical, and UCSD was the center. Basically, all research was being pushed from UCSD. Leon Thal, look him up. He was my mentor. He crashed his airplane. So from there, we had all this education. We got a master's, we got this. We were ready to go to East Coast, to one of these IV things, and we said, this is not the kind of life we wanted to live. You know, this is not, just because everybody's following this track, it doesn't mean it's the right track. You know, as the poet says, the path less traveled is always usually. So we said, let's look around, and we read Dan Buettner and other people, and said one of the blue zones. You know, everybody knows about the blue zones. Mm-hmm. Blue zones are some of the healthiest places in the world. The only blue zone in America is Loma Linda, and the only validated one in the world is Loma Linda. Loma Linda, not Loma Linda in particular, the Seventh-day Adventists. They are, the Seventh-day Adventist study is 100,000 people, 2 phases. The second phase is 50 years, altogether 50 years. So we said we're going to go there. And our mentors, I've had 4 mentors with 800 publications each. And we were on that track. Let's publish the next paper, 10 papers in a year. To what end? So we said we're going to Loma Linda, and the first thing we heard from all these mentors was, it's career suicide. I said, well, if the career wasn't that fruitful, it needs to be killed. You know? So we went to Loma Linda. I became the director of Alzheimer's Prevention Program, Memory and Aging Center at the time. I was the director of aging at San Bernardino, and my nature, throughout the county, giving talks in churches, over 100 churches. I should do 2 residencies and a master's during the residency of preventive medicine and neurology. And then she got into Harvard and Columbia. We picked Columbia because it was longer, so she could. So 2 years she was in New York, and I had the kids, so we would fly every 2 weeks back and forth. During the ICU for rotations in Columbia for vascular neurology, at night she would go to culinary school. And we'll get to that. Why? Because Aricept is nothing. Aricept is a ploy. It's a facade. Celery, food. Though that's medicine way better, and we'll talk about that in a second. So while there, of course, we gathered data. 3,000 patients looking at different lifestyle variables. Looked into the Advanced Health Studies, CDLT, 500 people, the reviews. Ayesha's the researcher of the brain. I bring the looks. And it's always bad when they laugh when I say that. Lots of review papers, comprehensive reviews, meta-analyses, and all this. And repeatedly, lifestyle. Wait a second. So if you have this, why is there nobody talking about it? And then as soon as somebody comes up, a journalist writes something on top of Time magazine that butter is bad, and nobody asks who said that. It was a journalist just looked at some papers and wanted to sell papers. Yet 70 years of data that shows lifestyle works in heart disease. Lifestyle works in diabetes. Lifestyle works in everything. And what lifestyle? Whole food, plant-based, popular, not popular, it doesn't matter. There it is. Facts are facts. Activity matters. Physical activity. It doesn't mean that you have to do marathons. In fact, there's a question if you do ultra running, it's not good so activity matters. Stress matters. We've divided into good stress and bad stress because that good stress is actually the biggest thing. Third factor, sleep matters. Why else would you be sacrificing 8 hours of your day in a recumbent position? It matters. It's a cleansing. We have a whole talk on sleep. 70% increased risk of dementia if you have sleep disorder. And mental activity matters. We use education as a proxy for mental activity, but no, mental activity matters. It's actually the biggest protector. The biggest thing that determines protection against dementia and stroke is mental activity. These things matter. They don't just matter a little bit. These are not little papers that they said, paleo people ate eggs or meat. We used to hunt. Go try to hunt without a shotgun or with a shotgun. There's no data. Food matters, and we saw this in Loma Linda. Activity matters, education matters, or mental activity. Here we have Loma Linda, which is in that region 50% plant-based. We know the population. They have nowhere else to go than to come to me, sadly for them, because I was the only dementia clinic in the region. And I spoke in every church in the region, which means that there was no limitation of access of information. So when in public health, you look at what confounds. Is there a limitation of access? Are they not getting to you? Are they going somewhere else? Or they're just not going anywhere? They're staying home? None of those. We checked that. Yet 5 miles away, San Bernardino, which is socioeconomically one of the worst places in the country compared to Detroit, it was completely opposite. In churches, we would go, and every 65-year-old man especially, that would come, had dementia. Mostly vascular dementia, but dementia, Alzheimer's and vascular. Because Alzheimer's is a vascular disease. It is, as much as people won't. And the difference was profound. In our population, this is just Alzheimer's. We're not even talking about stroke, which is the relationship is very clear. It's vascular. Well, the name is it's stroke, a vascular phenomenon. We're not even talking about depression, anxiety, all these brain diseases that are lifestyle related. There's not enough time for me to give you all the data on depression and activity, physical activity, depression and exercise, anxiety, and all these things. So, again, we asked the question, why is it that one person who gave coconut oil to their husband, one case, it becomes $1 billion business, yet we who have 3,000 patients, and we still in our book, we said, it's anecdotal. As a scientist, you have to say what kind of data it is. If it's prospective, repeated by somebody else, then you say, oh, better. But we had 3,000 cases, and we still hedged on that, said, as a scientist, you can't, but that's amazing. And then the prospective studies showed the same thing, and the longitudinal, and then Columbia University did a study that showed the same thing, that 5,000 people on MCI, mild cognitive impairment, that were put on a certain type of diet, moved forward, their chance of going on to dementia, even at that stage, was significantly reduced, 53%. You have a drug that does 1%? Why is there nobody talking and still you have butter on top of Time magazine? So, to us, it wasn't just a number game, it wasn't a business. We were asked to become directors of brain health program in Cedars-Sinai. Cedars-Sinai is a very special hospital, the richest in the country. They have a general doctors and then the academicians who eat off of the general doctors. So we had one day of clinic and all Hollywood crowd, and we were interested in the communities. And the same thing, the community wanted to get the information out there. So coming back to Loma Linda, we realized that the lifestyle component is massive. It's and why is it important? Let's take just Alzheimer's. The fastest growing epidemic in America and first world is Alzheimer's. It's the number 3 cause of mortality, morbidity in America, number 1 in England and UK. We will be number 1 soon, because the fastest growing population in America are those who are chronically unhealthy and are aging. Those two combined. That number, with even the most conservative statistical analysis, shows that if you delay the dementia and stroke by 5 years, your healthcare cost in general will be reduced by half. Why is that important? Right now, the most expensive disease in America is Alzheimer's. Number 2 is heart disease at 100 billion. Number 1 is Alzheimer's, 259 billion direct, 240 billion indirect. This number is expected to grow to $3 trillion by 2050. Forget about what political affiliation you have. This will collapse the system, not just the healthcare system. So it's to everybody's benefit to do something. And if drugs would have worked, $1 trillion worth of drug studies, which I was part of many, would have shown 1% efficacy. Guess what's our success rate with clinical trials in Alzheimer's? Zero. If there was even a slight hint of this expensive disease, potential profitable disease, because who's the aging population who have the money, would Pfizer have left research in pharmaceuticals? They wouldn't. So we have to do something. So here's the very simple formula. This tsunami is coming. Data, not just from us, from everybody you look at, shows that lifestyle makes a difference. There's some noise about this kind of diet, that kind of diet, but in the big academic institution, it's obvious. Even when you push the gentleman from Plant Paradox who's never done research in his life, we were in a conference together and we were the main speakers. And when I pushed him, he said, oh, I mean plants. I said, then you have to speak to it. Because right now, so everybody agrees. It's lifestyle, it's activity, these things. So it's no controversy. So where do you implement this lifestyle that everybody agrees on? So our book was a no-brainer. It was. And we just made it interesting. There was no controversy. We were actually pushed by Simon & Schuster and Harper to give us something sensational, something amazing. I said, this is it. There are no vitamins. We are not giving you a concoction of vitamins that some of these books are saying. It's this. What can be done, what we know will make a difference, is a community initiative. So we looked at beach cities. Beach cities instituted Blue Zone in all of their three cities. Manhattan Beach, Redondo Beach, and Hermosa Beach for the last 9 years. One statistic that just came back, we're talking about kids. This is very soft. It's the concept of culture. I define culture as when information and ideas around the concept becomes ubiquitous in a population in a very quiet way. You turn left and you see a sign. You turn there, you open menus, and there's one healthy item. That little guilt works. The nuns knew it works. and you go there and say walking zones, and you go, it's presence, it's availability. Then people will make themselves available, and it's not an all or none. It's not New Year resolution.
That's right.
It's one small step. That step becomes the nidus, the seed of the crystallization of behavior. That's the only way it will work. All the studies have shown. So one database came back after just 8 years of blue zone living in children, certain age, well studied. So they did all the controls and everything. Who are 25% 12% diabetes and insulin resistance, and 25% obese. This year, the same population, so making sure that there are no confounds, 6%. Without any active campaigns, with just the environment changing, the availability, the access, the information around, from 25% to 6%. That's not just diabetes or insulin, that's attention, that's focus, that's better grades. All of that is in that little behavior, because everything is in everything, and Father of Medicine says this. So it's critical that we kind of start this battle against this disease, these diseases, because they're all connected. Stroke, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, depression, in the communities. So when we wrote the book, we said we're going to put the profits into this endeavor, Healthy Minds Initiative. The second component of it is it's not a dictated model. It's a little more difficult than that. It never works when somebody comes, he says, brings these little nice pamphlets. Here, you're going to live like this. Never works. The harder thing is having these conversations, little dissonance where people look at you and you don't know what's happening. But it has to be, I hate this word, but I'll say it, organic. It has to come from the community, because every community is different. If I took the model from here or Sedona to San Bernardino, it wouldn't even be recognized. It has to be around the needs, the resources, the readiness, and who consider themselves leaders. Because it's not the person that has the title of leader. It's the person that steps up and says, I'm going to do work. That's a leader. So it has to be a community-driven model. So we've done this in beach cities. They're a little ahead of our game because the environment was ready. We're the directors of the Healthy Minds Initiative and Brain Health throughout beach cities. They have more resources. Sedona has started this, so we're starting. We've been there twice, and the conversations are going. And we're hoping to Hawaii. I'm looking forward to that. I'm going to go there several times. Yeah, we're hoping that. Here as well, that you guys will take lead as well. And why these places? Better socioeconomic, higher, because you want success. And if you start a project where there are too many unknown variables, access, information, education, city being ready, then you're going to fail it. But in a better economics regions, some of those elements are already controlled. Sedona is ready for this. Beach cities is ready for this. And we're hoping that we can do the same thing here. And the idea is actually we wouldn't own anything. One of the things is whatever plan is instituted has 3 components. That's it. That's the only part of this. One is education, availability of information everywhere. Maybe. Second is a more concerted effort from the leadership, faith community, businesses, everything, as far as making this model or whatever you guys decide throughout this region. And thirdly is research. Because if a model is not validated, it's just, again, another hearsay. Somebody else said, my uncle did this, and that doesn't mean anything. We've heard too many of those. So there should be an element of research that actually validates something instead of just somebody saying something. Sorry, I took over everything. So,
No.
So go ahead.
That was great. That was perfect. I think the component that I would like to add is that this environment and this place is already primed. What Bob is doing here at H3, that's basically it. All of the elements are here. People come here for the sake of health. And that makes it easier. So some of the base elements that are needed for a project to be established are already here.
Throughout the city.
Throughout the city, exactly. And so for this city to become a health destination, especially a brain health destination for that particular population, is an incredible opportunity. It can be a model for other cities as well. There are small little projects going on around the country, but it's not as comprehensive as we would like it to be. And I think that's what Dean and I bring. We're in the trenches. We work with patients day in and day out. I work in the hospital as well. So we're working with the patients, and we see the failure, the old model that we use day in and day out. Aspirin, statin, Plavix, perhaps Coumadin, goodbye. That's basically it. That's sick care. And what we're trying to move towards is healthcare, and this is where healthcare begins. That's all I want to say.
And sick care is very important. I was saying,
oh yeah, absolutely.
Your partner did the surgery on my back. I just found out. Amazing.
Really?
Neurosurgery at Georgetown. Lessenhoff was his partner. And without that, I would still be paralyzed. I mean, that's amazing. That's incredibly important.
Right.
I think there's synergy between what hospitals and clinics do, which we are involved in, and what the community needs. I think that synergy needs to be breached. That connection needs to be made. And that's where we're hoping that we can. And by the way, the next question is: so who leads? That's a question nobody ever asks. But who leads? That's the thing that creates dissonance, and that's actually the least of the problem. Because the first thing is, if a group of people, it doesn't have to be 100 people, 5, 6, 7 people say, this is an important thing. Brain health for the community, I think that's pretty important, because toe health is not. So if brain health is important, and by the way, we say that if you take care of the brain,
right,
you've taken care of all of the body.
Exactly.
This little 3-pound organ, 2% of body's weight, consumes 25% of body's energy. There lies all the problem. So if you've taken care of that, which requires the same mechanisms but much more, the heart will follow, the kidney, diabetes, the endocrine, everything else.
And we're just talking about the structural aspect of brain, but the most important part is the emotional,
yes,
the psychological, and the behavioral model that our dear friend Dr. Rankin always speaks about. So
yes,
that benefits from it as well.
And we're kind of lucky that we have some friends here already. I'm sorry, you didn't know, but you're my friend now. So
we're friends,
whether you like it or not. So, yeah. And Howard and everybody here. So I think we have the nidus of a beautiful movement and of health, brain health, and not just Alzheimer's. We're talking about you were talking about joy. It's so funny that when we were writing the book, it started evolving. Such a cathartic experience writing it. And at the end, it turned out to be like we could have renamed it purpose-driven life, because at the center is purpose. Purpose determines the activities that you undertake that actually builds these connections in the brain. Without a purpose, nobody's going to do diet right. It's going to be, I'm going to eliminate all carbs. Why? They're great. They lower your cancer risk. Or I'm going to do this little pills combination. So purpose gives a little more work, activity, and direction. So that's our little impromptu talk we weren't expecting. So would love to get some conversation as far as what you think, as far as its importance to your community, and how do you, yes?
Well, I'm just kind of curious because you made clear the awareness that the medical field generally has been focused on sick health and not including nutrition.
Yes.
Who's working against us? I mean, there's things going on here that I just don't want to be so ignorant of, that there are forces working against us. The schools educate. Do all the doctors not know it would be wise to eat healthy? Our local fellow here from VIM, Dr. Cox, Dr. Raymond Cox, actually made a point of this recently in speaking to a group.
Volunteers in medicine.
Volunteers in medicine, all volunteers at this. Something.
Yes.
Like that. But he made a clear point. I'm only half educated in medicine.
Yeah.
Because the other half was actually dietary and eating.
As doctors, we're never trained.
I know.
So 4 years of college, so just going through the motions.
Yeah.
You just have to get your MCATs, working towards the MCAT. 4 years of medical school, no education. 4 years of residency, you're barely surviving. Fellowship, never get trained.
Sickness care.
Yeah,
It is.
but I
sickness care.
don't consider it so much working against. These are forces that are naturally created that we have control over. Let me tell you something. For example, one of the big forces is sugar or saturated fat, animal meats and butter and all this, and sugar. I don't consider that as a force working against. It's just a mechanism of society for something that tastes good. So how do you change that? Awareness that makes market in here instead of here. So now all of a sudden you see these organic foods, and I don't care about organic, but if it's going to work as a selling tool, let's do it. Or gluten. So the market determines, let's move it towards health. And guess what? They'll just move. Right now, 70% of foods that are packaged, 70%, we just wrote a paper on not diabetes, pre-diabetes, insulin resistance, and NHANES, national database. Pre-diabetes increases your chance of dementia significantly. Just published last month. So sugar is everywhere. If people think that sugar was always there, just go to an African country or Asian country. Sugar is like a party once a year, and it's a clump from cane. It's horrible looking, and so it's not everywhere. Here, it's everywhere because we like it. So it's in 70% of foods that are packaged. So if we make it everybody aware that this is not good, guess where the market will move? It's not. I don't think it's that people are against it. You make the market available that, we're going to go to this, which is sugar-free foods, and this. It will move. But why do we like the bottom-up approach? Because the bottom-up approach is the kind that actually even controls the market, which is you become aware. Instead of buying this, you buy this.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I agree with you. I love to do things on a positive spin, but I don't want to be so ignorant. There's forces against us. But the point is, we all make good local choices.
Yes.
We got to get off a whole bunch of grids, and I'll just add it to the food grid because it comes in great quantity, low price. I mean, the joke for me, I buy lettuce. It's 99 cents for any kind of lettuce. If I want a locally grown organic lettuce, $2, $3, $4.
Right.
Yeah.
That doesn't need to be, by the way.
I agree with you, and I think one of the most important elements of the Healthy Minds Initiative is the education wing. We believe that every individual should have access to the latest data. Unfortunately, the system is made in a way where, when a bunch of scientists write a paper, they write it for each other. And it takes years,
not even for each
decades.
other. How do I write it so the other scientists can't even read it, so
Right.
I look smart?
It's a silly game. We've been to many scientific conferences. I have 5 posters at the Alzheimer's Association conference coming in July. But it's such a cynical, small group of people who are basically talking each other's language, and it never comes out of that room. So what we are trying to do is to take the latest population data or clinical trials on, say, for example, the benefits of exercise or the benefits of community, of having good relationships, changing it into a more palatable language, and just say it to people so they understand, because there's a lot of clutter and noise out there. Everybody's coming with their own book. Everybody's coming out with their own vitamin concoction. People need to know what to follow. People need to have a specific guideline to follow, and that's what the Healthy Minds Initiative provides.
We were just invited to a talk at Mind Body Green, and we were the first speaker. And then for brain health, on the stage they brought this young man. I said this before. He was a model. That trumps me right there. That beats me. And he was a journalist. And he wrote a book on genius food or something like that. And everything he said was completely contrary to data.
It's like,
And even though they invited us, I just couldn't stand there. So I got up and made a couple of jokes. But that's the kind of noise that exists. So for one of the things we're doing is videos on cooking. So Ayesha went to cooking school. And then we felt uncomfortable first. Because they say that my cousins say that we have more degrees than a thermostat combined, but it's uncomfortable talking about celery after all those. But that's actually where it starts. So going to the community and showing the data that, and not in a way that's p-value is such and such, but look, this person saying this is out of one paper which is flawed in this way. We have 50 years of data, 3,000 papers that show that this kind of diet, whole food plant-based, reduces every kind of disease you can think of. And they've been validated, repeated, which is the scientific requirements. But outside from that, so that we got that. Now, how do we get this to the public? Not the food, the movement. Movement, natural movement, exercise. Now, every time we say this, there's incredulous, 48% reduction in Alzheimer's from people who exercise. I mean, these numbers add up above 100%, but science doesn't work like that. 53% from food, 48% from exercise. Sleep disorders. Now, the only answer for sleep disorders is the next pill, next pill, next pill. Poor Michael Jackson was put on propofol. We knocked people out during surgery with propofol.
Large amounts.
Yeah, large amounts. So that's not the answer. There are things you can do and teach, sleep hygiene and all this, which, with just sleep hygiene, I can tell you, with just that, we've actually improved, if I had to come off the cuff, at least 50% of our patients sleep. But yet the general population doesn't know those things. So that's one of the things that's required to be spread out there as far as information. And the only way it can be done is from the bottom up.
And I think the information that needs to be out there is the benefit, okay?
Yes.
People don't need to know about neurotransmitters and BDNF and synapses.
No.
Yeah, you don't need to understand the internal combustion engine to drive from seapounds to Bluffton.
Yeah.
You don't need to know that, right? You
Yes.
you just need to know how to get there,
Yeah.
right? And in that respect, I think your education is right on, because it talks about the benefits. You don't go into, I mean, if somebody wants to go into the real details of what's going on in the brain, that's great, but that's not necessary, right? What's sufficient is to say, if you do this, the evidence is your risk goes way down. And then, I think, also personally, I believe, I don't know if this is something that is propagated here at Hilton Net Health. Personally, behavior change is tough, and so sometimes people need more sort of in-depth coaching,
Yes.
which doctors don't have the time for, they're not trained in, and what have you. So, it's great to say, okay, well, cut your diabetes risk, eat this, and my nurse will give you a few recipes. That's not going to cut it.
Success is critical. Success is critical because we have not had success. Where have we had success at a larger population level? We haven't. So if beach cities already is getting little bubbles of success, and if we get another community that's already at the pre-contemplation stage, so that means that they're more ready for it, and that becomes a success. We had a talk in Sedona. Somebody came and said, for every behavior change, even complex, it's not the 50% of population that has to be ready. It's about 12 to 15%, because then that spreads like wildfire. So if enough people find out, 10 to 15%, that, this city and that city, 3 cities, 2 cities, were successful in reversing diabetes or reducing diabetes by 10%. Have you done that anywhere with drugs? No. Heart disease by 5%. Alzheimer's by 10%. That will be a game changer. So that's our selfish motivation. If we can get these cities that are ready, and we can show in 5 years success, we will have done more for public health than HHS, CDC, and NIH put together. Well, they're all under HHS. Let's say HHS together. And I work for HHS.
I just have a question about those cities who've been successful at getting started and get some traction.
Yes.
Are there some common cultural denominators in those cultures, like the primary care physicians or the ministers, or some common themes about how who has driven that kind of change?
Yes. So it appears that, first of all, there's a little more affluent. Affluence does not mean, affluence in America means different from other countries, because affluence in other countries has been this paradox. So whenever countries become richer, affluence paradox, which is they became sicker. China, India, Japan.
Yeah.
In fact, they were healthier. When they became westernized, they became less healthy. That's a phase. Then the next phase, which will take 10 to 15 years, is, they'll go through this phase, and then the affluent actually then become aware, okay, that was good, that cookie was good, that unhealthy pie was good, but now I want to live. Then they go to the next phase. They're not in their phase. I mean, I'm talking about Japan is not even in that phase. US, there are a lot of cities like that. Colorado, the whole, Denver, beach cities, definitely. Palm Springs, we've been invited. So, same thing with at Sedona. very ready for many reasons, because they're also a destination. So when people live there, they know health. Oh, we're a health destination. So that means something. At least they research, and they're open to clearer research. This place is ready.